And I think, are we live? Are
What
we
will be
live?
the session
Yes, we
about
are
today?
live now. Yeah, we can.
Akiba, what's the session about today?
Okay, the session is going to be about open source and how the open source industry works, and exactly how you contribute to open source projects. So we have Vedansh with us today, and Vedansh is going to guide us about all this market of open source programming. So Vedansh, I think we can start now. Yeah, people are starting to join.
Hello everyone. Hi. Can you mute Anurag? Mute yourself. No, not you.
Yeah, if there is any echo, so please, whoever is not speaking right away can mute themselves.
I think there's some background noise from Anurag. I think if you can mute, I think that'd be great.
Let
That's
me
all.
do a server mute for now. I'll unmute him back.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
yeah.
Thanks a lot, man. Hey everyone. My name is Vedansh, and currently I am I'm running a community known as Dev's Nest. So a brief introduction about me. So I graduated in 2015 from a lesser known college known as KIET, and I joined Hackerrank as one of the initial tech members. And I was part of the community which I helped in scaling from 500k members to 10 million users or 10 million developers. If you know HackerRank, you would be knowing like community, like the place where you solve questions, solve challenges, participate in contests, apply for jobs, all of that. Then, besides this, I have been involved in various other initiatives. So we started a WhatsApp community for people to help tier 3 college students interact with various people having very similar journeys and have like been successful in their lives. So that grew up to 5,000 people in 2017. Besides that, I've been involved with Navgurukul, which is a non-profit initiative to teach underprivileged students programming and help them get jobs, like very similar to what we are doing right now. And that is something which we started in 2017 and 18. I was helping the founders, who was part of the very core team, and building learning journeys for various students. Currently, that initiative is doing really, really well, and we have right now, like, we're supposedly targeting year on year 600 to 700 students. uh, there are like many other small initiatives which I've been a part of. Some of them have been like totally in a very tech world, open source world, which I'll be discussing on as we go further down. But
So, Vedansh, my immediate question to you is, how do you explain open source, and what is exactly the open source, and how these open source softwares are different from the other softwares, like we see private softwares which are built by one company or one organization. How these open source softwares are different?
got it. So open source and closed source, I think, as the name indicates, it just means that the entire source code is available for anyone to at least visualize. When I say at least visualize, there's a lot of other technicalities that go on top of that. But everybody can look at the code, deploy the code, and look at the nuances of it. So if we are putting any of our work on the platform, we are inviting people for at least, I would say, scrutiny. Like, our work shouldn't have failures. Like, or if there is, people will be very easily able to look into it, point errors into it, and you'll be easily able to improve. So that is one place where, like, which is the difference between open source and closed source, that your entire code, the actual code that you are writing, is out there for free, is out there on the internet, available for everyone. But if we look at it like at the bigger picture of things, what is open source, or right now the community? Yes, any questions? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So, yeah.
if you're working on large projects, it also involves collaboration. open source is a term for collaboration from very diverse people from different places, different backgrounds. They can come together and collaborate on various projects. So I'm going to look at some terminology of open source, which is one of the terminologies is license. So if you know, like there's Apache license, MIT license, JNU license, and what these licenses mean is that who all can like how and when can you use this project and for what purposes you can use this project. So something like for sorry for like similar licenses, like you can use your project. Almost all licenses indicate that you can use your project for non. I'm sorry, there's some background noise in my house which is slightly distracting me. You can use this project for almost all the purposes. Sorry, I'm sorry. You can use this project for almost all the purposes, but if you plan to monetize it, that is something which you have to take a license from us. But most of them say that even if you like some of the licenses say that like MIT, that you can just you're free to use this open source project for any purpose whatsoever without any repercussions from our end. Like as long as we are not you know we it does not come back to us, we are very fine with it.
Yeah. So I'm sure a lot of students who are listening to this would love to know that some of the example of these open source platforms or softwares, and does it own by someone? I mean, does Microsoft or does Google, like technologies like big giants, own these softwares, the right of this software, the licenses, and what is the procedure of getting a license in that case? So, yeah, would love to know.
Got it. So if you look at, I think the biggest project, which is the Linux ecosystem, the Linux kernel, and which is where I would say the open source community really triggered in and said we're going to build like the monopoly of the Windows, which like we can have a different ecosystem, we can have a different kernel or a different operating system built on top of that kernel, which we lovingly use like Ubuntu and like CentOS based or Debian based. I think that is where the history of open source really kicks in, and that is one of the examples. Other examples, if you look at any projects which are very heavily engineering focused, not product focused, but very heavily engineering focused products, are usually open source and are usually built, on the internet with the collaboration of multiple people from different sources, Linux being one. And some of the products have like, specific companies have specific licenses. Like, have you heard of the React controversy? Like, React was like in a big controversy last year because Facebook, like the developers at Facebook built React, and since they open sourced it, they had a clause which not 100% but seemingly said that if you are using React you cannot sue us. And multiple companies, like there were huge threads on it, and multiple companies decided to opt out of using React, and the React system was like growing really well, and that put Facebook in a kind of a dilemma. And they said like we will remove this clause from our licenses page. And it really worked. I think community's impact is really huge. The amount of threads on Hacker News regarding React is something which made it truly open source or truly used by anyone, including the big companies. I say Automatic was one of the first companies to pull out and say that we are not going to use React until and unless like Facebook changes the contract. They followed by multiple other companies, and that is when Facebook came. And I think Facebook still have a policy of like with multiple other open source projects, like if you're using that and if you're a corporation or a company, you cannot file a legal suit against Facebook if you're working with that technology.
Yeah.
So there
So
are some nuances. Yeah, go
So
ahead.
there were a lot of projects. I mean, I recently heard that Google has a very good virtual reality project, which is Google Tilt Brush, and it's for creators to create these. And it previously it was closed source, and now it became open source. So, for us in virtual reality community, how we can take advantage of that? Does it allow us? I mean, does it really allow us to replicate the software, or does it just only allow us to use some component of it, or does it just only allow to just learn from it and then figure out the whole process in your own way? So, how we can take advantage of open source softwares as a developer?
Got it, got it. I would give you with like I will explain this to you with another example, which is Kubernetes, right? Like when Facebook was one of the first sorry, Facebook, I'm saying Google was one of the first companies to approach, the to approach the container the containerized world. And once they approached it, the point with these like Google and Facebook or like big giants, when they open source something, it is actually in a very, very stable state. It is not something which is like you really have to work a lot on it. The documentation is pretty decent, you know, all of that is pretty decent. So I think it's the same thing, and Kubernetes got heavily adopted after Kubernetes was made open. So it was heavily adopted with people starting to adopt in opens in like their production systems. I would say it would be a very similar thing for the software which you have used. I would not say like either you can use some version to install it, or you can use a provision version provided by Google or some other company. But what their intention is, so that you grew that software to like multiple other needs which Google is not part of. So for supposedly like somebody in the retail business, somebody in the gaming business can use the same software, can use the same and build plugins, build like really, really, make it streamline it, or I would say grow it so much so aggressively that the number of use cases grow exponentially of that software, which is something which any closed source company cannot do. Like for instance, any company have like some niches and they can only work on those scenarios. But if it is if it is open source, it can actually connect, like similarly for that virtual reality software. I really don't know about that, but it can be if it can be used, it will cover all the use cases in a very short period of time, as it will be built in like inside Google or inside the opens inside inside that would have been inside the closed source world. So that is the difference that we are looking at.
So, Vedansh, I would love to discuss some of your competitive coding journey, and especially getting into Hackerrank, how hard it is. I mean, it is very competitive. So, how did you made into it? What was the experience about, and how was the experience about working at Hackerranks and everything? So, would love to know all these details.
Got it. Can we discuss in like more about open source? I would like to, describe some smaller companies' journeys and
Yeah, surely,
how
surely.
does that help the company?
Yeah, surely you can
So
pivot it your way. Yeah.
yeah. So we are DevNest, like we are building our entire software open source. Now, what that helps, it also brings in another factor. It brings in a level of trust, which is something which is very, very important. Supposedly, why Signal is heavily adopted, especially by people in the tech world. And supposedly, I have been using Signal for the last 3.5 years. Because when the code is like open source, you know what you are using. You know if there are any backdoors or not, and the community votes for the types of features that you really, really need. The community makes those choices, and that is what makes the difference. And secondly, like if you look at like especially like our example, our students are building the software which they would be using. It's the community which builds for itself. So the pricing model, the cost, everything goes down, but most importantly, it brings a level of trust, which is something which is slightly difficult in a closed source software to bring in.
Yeah, you just said about that how I mean, there are, all the backdoors of Signal, but do you think is it also make it vulnerable to hackers or something, because they also know the backdoors and they can manipulate the software in their own ways? So, what is the argument against that? Because that is also a very known argument against open source. So,
Yeah, so that has been like a very, yeah, you're right. So suppose in Bitcoin, right? There have been, like, in the blockchain world or in the cryptocurrency world, there have been multiple cases. I don't remember any right now, but in the last spike, in the 15-16 spike, there were multiple cases where people found some vulnerabilities and exploited that. But the good thing about it is like everybody on the internet can find those vulnerabilities, and they really, really get fixed in a very short period of time. Just like nobody can take advantage of those vulnerabilities for a really long period of time. And that is where the community support is much more, like, the advantages overlay the disadvantages by a huge, huge degree. Suppose you have vulnerabilities, you will have a lot of people looking at them. You would have a lot of eyes looking at them, and those can be really, really fixed in like a very small period of time. So that is, I would say, my argument. And I think every system would have would have some vulnerabilities. Even Windows 0 Day are
for
like still
sure.
famous.
Yeah.
These, yeah, yeah.
So
So
now my question to you is, how for a student, what is the journey and where they can find the path to collaboration, how they can simply start collaborating to biggest projects, and they be a small part of a great system, and maybe even earn from that. So what is your experience, and how do you want to guide them?
got it. I see journey to any open source is very similar to a journey to a startup or as an internship when you're looking out for. And one thing which I think you really have to know is you should be proficient in like one small part, in like that maybe one language, and solving one type of problem is something which I really feel students should be should be proficient in. And after that, I would say in the beginning, if you're looking out for like beginning level projects, or this is your first or second project, look out for companies or look out for open source projects which have a really good or a decent community. Because in the beginning you would be needing a lot of help. So don't go for big shots where there are a lot of smart people already on the system, and the amount of, see, open source can get tricky. I would say that is one disadvantage. The first or the second commit may take weeks or even months to go through. Like if you're not building something of your own, if you're not working with like a very close friend. So I would say go for a tight knitted community where you can get some mentorship, and you can build, at least contribute to like some basic projects. I think one good thing is there are a lot of websites these days. I can post the link here, which give you the link of finding projects in various languages, various domains. There are various tags on GitHub like good first issues, which you can use to find your first project. I would say choosing a project, deploying it is something. Look at the community. Community is one of the best ways to you know is one of the best filters. If you find the project easy enough, look at the community, contribute for at least a month, contribute, solve 2 3 4 bugs like minimally, and you will get to understand the whole project. Then you can make your decision whether you want to continue or you don't.
So again, yeah, my question is, there is also a lot of competitions. So to boost this sort of, you can say, contribution to open source programmers, and so there are big companies like Google and Microsoft. They host these competitions like GSOC and everything. So what is the way to get into these programs? And would love to listen some guidance on that as well.
Got it. I would say like the two most prestigious ones are GSOC and Outreachy, and both of them are like very, very good. And I would say it's one of the best ways, right? I think one way is to like really have a good deck, like look at the project, really talk to your mentors, explain what do you want to build, how do you want to build. But I would say like a much better approach, or a more better approach is look at some of the organizations which are participating from like last year, and they're like quite similar year after year. Look at the type of projects that they are doing. Find your niche and start contributing from slightly early, like 3 months, 4 months down the line. You would have a really good understanding of the system. It'd be very easy for you to get into GSOC rather than building the proposal, like working aggressively on the proposal and the project side. If you have actually contributed before, it boosts your chances more than anything else.
Yes.
And I have seen this because that is very, very difficult to crack. And I think this is why a majority of the students do not complete the last layer of GSOC, and also quite some do not complete like there are three layers, right? The beginning, the middle, and the end. Like the second layer, like the second part, and which is, I think, which is like gaming the system. I would say go to learn, go to learn like go to learn from an organization. There's some of the most premium organizations out there, and try not to game the system. And the best way to be 100% sure that you will be selected is start contributing a bit early. And if you can do that, I would say that be like a definite win. Start like choose a platform, start contributing like 1-2 months early to the very least, and then there'll be like a very high probability that you'll get the project. And even if you don't, like by a sheer amount, you would have learned so much that you are a part of Jenkins, or you are a part of SciPy or any project. That really makes the difference at the end of your, like when you're applying for jobs. That will matter as close, like if you're really applying to good tech companies, uh, at level with your Google names on your resume, like GSOC. It will also matter which organization you've contributed to, and if it's a really decent organization and you've really put in the effort, it will not make much difference.
Amazing. So GSOC always also pays for it, though clearing it is competitive and it's really hard. And having that on your resume always raises the value of your resume. But they also pay some amount. So can would you like to mention about how developers can earn, or are there other sources as well while they can get earn money while contributing to projects? Because a lot of people, a lot of students
Outreach,
are money centric.
got it. So Outreach is one of the organizations which also pays quite decently. Like
Yeah.
it's a very similar thing, 3 months internship, which is like GSOC. And both of them, I really don't know what's the GSOC's current price. I think back then it was very huge during my, like during 15-16, and then I think they decreased it or reduced it by half or something. But still, it's pretty decent. And there are like lots of, so suppose you're working for Red Hat. So most of the organizations work is completely open source, and if you can prove it to them, I would say that's like a slightly long term journey. But if you can prove it to them that you are ready to work for them for free, or not for free, like if you're ready to contribute, they would be very happy to make you an offer. That is like one way. There are other ways, is a lot of these student conferences which Python organizes, and a lot of other communities organize on their own. I know about Python and Rails. And if you're contributing to that, they would invite you to these organizations where these communities where you can be a speaker. You would get a lot of opportunities, and everybody is looking out there to hire. Like most of the people who are paid for the project have come there to to at least like get their hiring done, and they will be looking out there for people in the community to hire some students, and they'll be very happy to make you an offer. So those are some of the very advantages which I see to contribute in some of the big projects like Python, Rails, and all the other big frameworks.
So, according to you, what are the skills? I mean, what sort of skills somebody need? Does it JavaScript? Does it Python? So, what specific skill one should focus if they want to contribute in these sort of open source platforms?
I would say s- looking for specific skills to contribute to open source should not be the exact right way. I would say learn the skills which you find interesting, and then find projects on those skills. And there is a definitive space and community for for any good skill or any decent skill in the market. So even if we look out, there are like thousands and thousands of JavaScript developers or Python developers, but we have a lot of space for good Python developers. We have a lot of space for really decent JavaScript developers, really good even HTML and CSS developers. So the space for developers is out there in the market, and it is just increasing day by day, even much more than the number of students who are learning JavaScript and HTML, CSS, or Python. I would say learn a skill which you really, really like, which you really feel comfortable with, and look out for open source projects. Start small, start contributing. Open source requires a bit of patience, I would say. But if after some time, once you get used to it, it's a very fun journey and it's a very rewarding one too.
Yeah. So I would also love to add that a lot of people I know who started with spelling correction and everything into open source, and they just were raising numbers of contributions and everything. Also, I would love to know how Git, some of the Git tips for people who are collaborating. What are your suggestions? How they should get familiar with Git as fast as possible, or what are your tips for them to start with open source?
No, I would say, see, nobody likes to, in the open source world, everybody likes a self starter because most of the people are working full time, like, and contributing on the side. So they really don't have time to handhold. When I say handhold, they are really fine to 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 help you out if you're stuck any place. But raising a PR right, all right, knowing the basics, deploying the project, following instructions, following the wiki are some of the things which they are really looking out for. And if those basics are not met, it is difficult to get started into decent sized projects because supposedly in the months of October, when Oktoberfest starts and everybody gets a t-shirt, every second person is looking out to contribute. But it really, and I think that is where the backslash came from. Like, all we are looking out for people who can who might need some business logic help, or who might need help in understanding the project. That is something which we are really fine with. But I think following the instructions right, or in a company, right, in the first month of a company, what we expect from a fresher is, like, if you need any help to set up the project, if you need any help with Git, this is how we solve for Git, and some amount of training. That is something which open source companies really need. That the fresher has already looked out for that, has already hustled their way and learned those skills before coming in. So, and Git is really, really easy. It's just like 1 days of work. Like, watch a YouTube video, push some code, try to see how a branch is made, how a pull request is raised. Each come, like, if you're joining any open source, look at the past pull request. Some of them might be like creating a branch. They're like very less combinations. So either they are creating a branch and using a pull request, or they are like forking the repository and getting a pull request from their part. So they are like very less combination, and it's very easy to like learn all of that. And just remember, you have a limited number of questions before you make your first commit. Like, and that is for like any decent organization, not for a very starting organization. So try to make those conversations really, really interesting. Try to ask the right questions. So get the basics sorted, and it is very easy to get the basics started. It's nothing rocket science. Just setting up the project, Googling basic stuff, and knowing the basics of Git. And this is all after you have a basic understanding of the skill that you are contributing in.
Yeah, I was going to ask a very cool question and I just forget what it was. I'm trying to remember that. Since अभी किसी के पास कोई भी और question है, so please, Vedant is with us. You can ask your questions related to open source. And I'm just thinking about the question I missed.
Got it. So I have like one story to tell. So Akshay is like, he's an Atlassian. He's a very good friend of mine, and he was part of GSOC Python. And when I asked him like how he started contributing to Python, he said it was a very, like, he gave a talk. He went to Japan to give a talk, and he's very young. He's like a 18 or a 19 pass graduate. and he went to Japan, I think in 18 or 19. He's a 2020 graduate, I would say. Yeah, he's a
Yeah.
2020 graduate,
Yeah,
and
so
his
I
question,
I just remembered my question, and it was about, so since from a developer's perspective, it's very hard to read somebody else's code, and in open source you are doing it on regular basis, so you have to first analyze everything what is going with the project right now. So what is your tip for understanding somebody else's code in the beginning? I'm sure it's going to be very hard for beginners. So what are your tips for them?
so I say don't try to attempt, reading the whole code base. That's a
For
task
sure.
which really doesn't take us anywhere. So
Use
just
attraction. Yeah.
yeah, use attraction. Just try to set up the code base in your local. That helps you, and like a good overlaying that that will provide you an understanding of the project, like what it is doing, like not at a technical level or the code level, but what the project is actually doing. And then the second question is, look for beginner issues. Look for beginner issues, and if you're able to find them in the code base via keyword search, and try to see what they are doing, and ask there in the issues if you need more clarity on that. So I would say in the beginning, don't really try to read extensive amount of code base. Try to solve one or two beginner level issues which would not need you or anybody else to read the whole code base. And once you create your first PR, you would see that you have learned so much more about the code base by just looking at one file or two file and understanding the whole architecture at a slightly abstracted level. Yeah.
Totally got it. Totally got it. So
Yeah.
also, let's talk about the approvals. So, for example, you took a fork and you started working on your fork, and uh, you think you did it very really well, and you think your code is performing really well. Then you submit it and it's getting rejected. So what is the threshold? How many chance you get to correct it, or is what is the chance of approval of your submitted code? I mean, it's very subjective, it's very dependent, but uh, since you have this amount of experience, I'm sure you have a view or a perspective on this as well.
I would say it is very, very subjective.
Hmm,
So it's more like,
totally
are
agree.
you moving forward? So as I would say, right, in the beginning, choose organizations which have an active community, which are decently active. So you are getting like a good amount of feedback. You might be completely wrong, and it's totally fine. You need patience in the beginning, and it might take a month or two before you actually your first PR goes in the project. But what I would say is, like in your every pull request or your every commit that you're creating, you are getting a decent amount of feedback. Even if you're wrong, like where are you wrong? If that is not the case, after after a month or so, if you see the community is dead, or if you see like people are not reacting, like interacting back, or there are like very few people who are contributing on a regular basis, it might not be a very good starting journey. After you are experienced enough, you can take the ownership to build up organization where you are like a sole owner, or like contributing with very few folks. And that is where it comes in, where I say, in the beginning, choose projects which are community heavy, which have a decent amount of community to it, where people are helping you out.
Yeah. So, what are the measurements? How do you select which project is in lining with your subject, or it is going to help you more in future in comparison to other projects or something? So, what are important project, valuable products, projects? How do you find them? What is the process? And yeah, so how do you search for good projects?
Uh, it is not rocket science. Like it is a hit and trial method. Supposedly, I have experience with web development. I have, like, I would say, if I'm looking at maximum of the students here, if I have done some web development, if I have worked on Python, I would just go and look at some of the first good issues in Python, or in JavaScript or in React, and try to look at the projects, see a project which has a decent number of, like, 3 4 good first issues, and there has been decent amount of contributions in the last week or the last month, all right, which amounting to at least 5 6 people. And if they have a Slack group or a GitHub community or a Discord community or any place, try to like be active there, introduce yourself, and tell them that you're planning to contribute. And that is, I think, it's a very good measurement that you start getting the idea like how the community is, how the people are, like what's the work like here. And I think that is where you start contributing. And once I think you worked for a month or two, or like even 3 4 months, and contributed decently, you get a fair enough amount of idea of the open source world to start contributing in decent projects.
Yeah. So suppose if I have great amount of contributions, you told us about a friend who went Japan to speak about the subject and everything. So are there chances that Google also hire me after GSOC, or maybe after my contributions, great amount of contributions? So is it a way to the FANG companies as well?
uh, the fan companies have a specific way of interview.
Yeah.
And some of them like really look forward to the to hiring people who have worked on or who have built very decent projects, or contributed in some of the best known open source projects. But they also focus strongly on problem solving skills, and I think which they have always focused on. So I do not really know the answer of like exceptional scenarios, but in a more generalistic sense, they are focused towards problem solving scenarios. But a lot of similar fang like companies would be very happy, and they don't have very exceptionally high standards of problem solving or DSN algo. And a lot of these companies would be very happy to hire. Like if you look at Automatic powers a huge part of the internet, like the parent company of WordPress,
Hmm.
and they do not have any problem solving round. A Gojek, for example, if you are like a decent enough system design developer, they do not have a problem solving round at all. They focus on your core skills, like have you solved any recent problems, and do you really know the system and computer science fundamentals. So fan companies might be slightly difficult with just open source. I really don't know about the exception, like the outliers or like one-off cases. But in a more generalistic sense, I think they also look for DSN algo or algorithmic skills.
Totally. Totally. Yeah, so I think this is pretty much it. My questions are over. So if anyone has any questions for Vedansh, and would love to Vedansh know more about DevNest, the kind of goals you are trying to achieve with DevNest, and how these people who are with us, who are listening with us, can join your Discord, your community, and can join such conversations every week where you host them. So yeah, would love to know all the details.
Sure. I'll like answer that in like the end. I would say like we can have some student questions,
Yeah,
and then I
sure.
can talk more about the project and what am I building right now.
Yep. So, any questions, guys, for Vedansh? Nobody is asking right now, but yeah,
I think open source in general is a slightly heavy topic,
yeah,
and it takes time.
I
I
agree. I agree.
I don't blame the students at all. But yeah, so coming back, what we are building. So DevNest has come in place for like one simple goal, and that is to democratize college education. So if we look at like education and democratize are two words which have been used together for a really long time. But I would say like the very first people who actually did it was
Hmm.
MIT when they did their when they put all their courses online
Yep.
through OCW, and then there was Khan Academy, which really put some of the best content online, and people followed, and now the best quality lectures are there online. So the best quality content is there online. But a college is much more than content, and it is a community. It is a peer learning, very tightly knit community where you are interacting with friends on a daily basis.
Hmm.
And any good college promises honest results. They delivers honest results. Like they have people who have started startups. They have students who who have joined some of the best tech companies. They have alumni who are, they're in leading places in the tech world, or in like any world. Some of the qualities of a good college, and that is what we are trying to build. We're trying to build a meaningful alternative at an exceptionally low cost for a student, which is highly scalable. So it is built on the principles of peer learning. As simple as that. So if I just can repeat it, a meaningful alternative to college education at an exceptionally low cost. Our first batch is starting on 10th March. It's totally free, like a 6 months intensive program to get you into tech education, to get you a job into software. And these are like very decent jobs we are talking about if you follow the whole curriculum. And we're trying to find ways on how we can scale it up to like at least in like 5 years millions of users, and to build it in a product way, to build it in a very lean way, to build it in like so every student gets a lot of personalized attention. Every student who completes the whole course should be ready for a very good job. Those are the scenarios and those are things which we are looking out to build here. You're very happy to join a server. All of our code is open source, and we always plan to keep it that way. We always plan to keep our community very, very open.
Also, would
And
love to know, apart from this edtech system, do you are I mean, are you guys working on any other project which is open source?
not currently. So I
Okay.
think this is taking away like the entirety of our time. We
Hmm.
hardly catch any sleep.
Yeah, I
So
can understand.
not right now. Yeah, but yeah, in the future, if the students really want to work on, and I really like the initiatives. Like most of the initiatives are currently handled by our students, and we're really happy to support any of our students when they're trying to build something, we're trying to work on any other project or any other small startup of their own. I would be really, really happy to help them and join them.
Awesome. So it is very lovely to host you, and we had such a great conversation about open source. I got to know a lot of things. I got cleared my brain with a lot of confusion about open source. So yeah, I'm really delightful to host you today, and it was an amazing conversation on open source, and we got enlightened.
Thanks, Avi. Same here. It was really nice of you to have me here. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the conversation too.
Yeah, so guys, let's say bye bye to Vedansh, and thank you for giving us this session. So thank you, Vedansh, and yeah, we really enjoyed the talk, and I'm sure DevNest and we could always collab on several projects and several these sort of ed tech sessions. So yeah,
For
thank you for being here.
Thanks, man. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed the session, and please, who are listening us to YouTube, because the session is live on YouTube as well, please do like, subscribe, and please share with your friends who really require this knowledge about open source and in general programming and in virtual reality. So if you also like DevNest is a great community, and you guys must check out devnest.in. And as Devansh said, that he is building this alternative colleging system where you can learn a lot of stuff. There are if you specifically want to learn virtual reality, XRDI is the an alternate community which is working towards virtual reality goals. And also at international level, XR Bootcamp is there. I'm also a mentor there. So XR Bootcamp is another very good community where we are talking about virtual reality all the time. So yeah, thanks for being my guest on the session, and have a great day, guys. Have a great time and enjoy your Sunday tomorrow. Tomorrow we are also going to have a conversation with one of the CFOs of many companies. He is going to be there on the XR podcast. So tomorrow 12 p.m. See you on XR podcast.